He graduated from Far Eastern University with the degree of Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in English, with Latin honors, magna cum laude. In his professional learning journey, he attended seminars significant to the teaching profession, such as implementing formative assessment to 21st century learners, information literacy, classroom management and test construction, and redesigning classroom interactions for online learning. He also finished a transformative leadership program that has allowed him to connect to students in a heart level. At present, he is handling English subjects for grade 7, 8, and 9, and a literature masterpiece subject for grade 11. He facilitates English macro and micro skills learning with systems thinking approach that enables students to explore things in different, innovative perspectives. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome Mr. Miko Angelo de Regla.
Hello po mga ka-Vibal. Good afternoon po. And thank you so much again for giving me an opportunity to lead and to facilitate a webinar for this afternoon. I would also like to thank those who are tuning in right now and those who said yes to this na kahit na some of us are already busy because syempre nagsimula na din ng classes. Well, in my case, nagsimula na yung classes namin. And so all the adjustment and all the learning milestones have already commenced. And so I just want to thank each and one of you for allowing or for giving your time for this afternoon. And so for today, let me share with you my presentation. Okay. So again, sometimes it's part of the technical stuff. Okay, let's just wait for it to zoom. Ayun, okay po. And so for today, we'll be discussing this. Okay, so today we'll be having effective interventions for struggling readers. So I am your resource speaker for today. Nasabi na rin po that yes, I am teaching in Benedictine International School, a systems thinking school. Okay. So actually last time I was already able to share something. I think that was August 11. So the topic was about synchronous and asynchronous assessment for beginning and critical reading skills. And then may mga questions doon sa webinar na yon that yung iba ang tanong nila, paano naman daw, for example, yung mga struggling readers. So, I was really happy when I was invited to share, to give my perspectives about this topic because even I myself sometimes experienced difficulty also or challenges as to how to cater intervention for struggling readers. But yes, for me, it's just about being willing and being open to a lot of things, especially to supporting our learners. And so let me now proceed to my next phase of presentation. But before that, let me ask you something. O di ba, may patanong ka agad si teacher. Diba, hindi pa ka nagsisimula yung discussion, may tanong agad. But yes, I feel that it's a need to ask this question. And the question is, are all teachers reading teachers? For example, if the teacher is, or if a mentor or a facilitator is teaching, for example, MAPE, or which is what they call this, a special subject. Or for example, if a teacher or a mentor teaches Filipino or even social science, even math subject, are all of them considered reading teachers? Okay, well, we might find out the answer later, or we might not, but let's just be open to to answering our own questions. Okay, but yes, I hope that this will probe something or will probe into something that will benefit you. Then the next question is, how do we become better teachers in the new normal? So actually, I also posed this question before, and I still have the same question because we know that we are good teachers in our own fields. Okay, we know that we can always be better. But again, this is the new normal. There is pandemic. Vaccine is not still discovered. Wala pa rin pong naaprubahan. And so, well, we still continue to have online classes. We still continue to have, blended instruction as well. And so, are we willing to become better teachers? Diba? So before we would be able to answer how do we become better teachers, are we willing to become better teachers given this circumstance? Okay, so let's see. And the last question, which is related to our discussion for today or to our webinar for today, is that how do we support students who struggle in reading? Okay, so whether we consider ourselves reading teachers, whether we accept the challenge, whether we choose to be open, okay, and willing to support, okay, how? Okay, how to support our students who experience difficulty in reading. So I hope that this webinar would somehow contribute to answering or to responding to these questions. And so for hopefully for 1 hour we'll be able to to support our learners in our own ways. Okay, well, we are not perfect teachers. We still face a lot of difficulties, but saying yes to attending this webinar, for me it's already a manifestation that you want it. Okay, you don't just need it, but you want it because you have this passion for teaching and you have this passion to support and to lend a helping hand for those readers and for those learners who passion for teaching, and you have this passion to support and to lend a helping hand for those readers and for those learners who need us, okay, who need support. And so let me share with you today the outline of our webinar. And so we'll have introduction, and then we'll also define and elaborate essential terms. Then I'll present with you also the elements of effective reading instruction. Then ito po tayo, syempre, papasok po dito yung intervention strategies and activities. So pinagsama ko na po siya. And the goal is to help struggling readers. And I also incorporated systems thinking. So a while ago during the introduction, it was mentioned that yes, I incorporate systems thinking in every learning and teaching interaction that I do. And so later, let's see if we can integrate systems thinking. Hopefully, yes, we can integrate that to, to having interventions for struggling readers. And last but not the least, we'll have conclusion and recommendation. And also later, we will have the question and answer to be facilitated um, by the people who supported me and who trusted me in this webinar. So yun po. And so before we start, let's just take deep breaths, okay? Because again, this is not easy. The task is not easy. The challenge, the mission, the vision, the goals are not easy. But we're all in this together. And so now I present you this. Okay, I present you this. Okay, and so, syempre, we will focus on reading. And they say that the best way to become a better... what's this? Ano tong word na to? Is it reader? Is it leader? Or is it something else? And then, is to read more. Well, I agree. Okay, according to my friend, well, Allington, malaki friend. Okay, so, ang sabi niya, the best way to become, well, for sure, it's a better reader. That's my assumption, is to read more. But the question is, yun lang ba? Okay? Yun lang ba yung tanging paraan? Yun lang ba yung best way for the readers to, for the learners to become better readers? O baka naman meron pang iba? If you notice also in the picture, there is a helping hand. Pero merong gap. Okay? Merong gap. And so, our goal as teachers is to bridge the gap. Our goal as teachers is to, to find better interventions for our learners. And this is our vision. This is the big picture that we wish to see, or that we want to see. And they say that if a child is a struggling reader or writer, because I believe that reading and writing are interconnected. Actually, the English macro skills, the four English macro skills are interconnected to each other. Okay, if a child is a struggling reader or writer, the conclusion was that, well, we have not yet discovered the way to help him or learn. So the question is, are we to be blamed? Are we teachers to be blamed kung halimbawa hindi nakapagbasa ng maayos yung mga learners o kung yung mga karamihan ng mga readers dito sa Philippines ay nagsastruggle? Tayo ba yung dapat sisihin? Well, I feel that no, it's not. Okay? Pero syempre, we also have to take action. And we will only see the big picture of that if we are willing to create beautiful changes, if we are willing to spark the fire of learning. And so, there, let's just continue to be willing to, to allow, to share, to allow to discover interventions that would eventually make us grow and make our learners grow. And so dito na po tayo. So now let's start defining and elaborating essential terms. Okay, so that we would be able to gradually understand what we are really talking about this afternoon. And so first, let's define again what reading is. And yeah, reading is a multifaceted process involving word recognition. Okay, so word recognition is the ability to identify words, comprehension, fluency, and motivation. Okay, so word recognition again, ability to identify words. Now, if the learners could not able to identify the words, is there a struggle? If the learners cannot able to understand the words being presented to them or the words and the context they see around, does it mean that they struggle? If there is no integration between word recognition and comprehension, is there a struggle? Well, we will know eventually. Okay, so just to add, reading is an active, dynamic process. It's not a product. It's not like, for example, you cook, for example, you bake something and then you focus on the product. In reading, we focus on the process. We focus on the milestone. And in every milestone, in every journey, there is always a conflict. There are always challenges. There is always a gap. Ba? Pagbali-balik na rin man natin ang mundo, tanggihan man natin or um, refuse man natin na merong gap or hindi man natin harapin yon, meron pong gap. Okay, meron pong gap. But this is not the end, right? We all have the power of choice to create something or to make things better. Okay, and our goal also is for the readers to shift between sources of information, and these sources are story clues and experience clues. So, ang reading po, hindi lang siya basta nagbasa yung learner natin, okay, reading na siya. Yung reading din, hindi lang din siya basta nag-share na lang or basta may naalala na lang siya or na-incorporate na lang siya na experiences, reading na rin. Hindi. Dapat po, merong integration ng story clues and experience clues. Ngayon po, kung wala pong integration, then there must be a struggle. Okay? Kung wala pong integration nitong mga sources na to, which are very essential, there must be a struggle. Next, reading is also having the elaborate meaning and strategies. Okay, so reading is not just about reading the text, but it's also giving and embracing the strategies. And then check interpretation, diba? So we have to make sure we have to well monitor if our learners really understand what they are reading. And for me, this is the most important. If they're able to use the social context to focus their response. Now, if they are able to read, if they're able to comprehend, are they able to communicate? For me, that is the most important key. If they're able to communicate, if they're able to socialize and to to realize what their purpose is of communication, then reading takes place. Okay. However, kung meron po sa mga ito, yung merong gap or merong challenges, then I hope that we are willing and committed to bridge those gaps. And then we go to reading literacy. For reading literacy, it is viewed as an expanding set of knowledge, skills, values, well, values kasama rin po yun, and strategies that individuals build on throughout life in various contexts. Ito po yung sinasabi ko. So reading is not just about reading, but it is interacting with their peers or with our peers, with the people that we love, with the people that we care for. Okay? And in the long run, reading will have its or will run its goal, which is to interact and to communicate with the wider community. Okay? And so, di ba, parang ang bigat, di ba, hindi lang pala siya basta, okay, dahil nakabasa na yung learners natin ng isang word or ng paragraph, maganda yung articulation, or halimbawa, napaka-confident, as in, basa ka agad. May literacy na ba? Well, hindi po. Diba? Marami pong factors that would involve reading process and reading literacy. Okay, and again, there is always a gap that we teachers, with the help of our students, parents, and the people um, supporting and collaborating with us, okay, are, well, responsible for it. So, yun po. And so, yan. So, this is just a visual representation of what reading is. And so, reading does not only involve sounds, does not only involve reading books, or, well, it's not just about spelling, it's not just about vocabs. It's the integration of these things, even hard work, okay? Even, even sounds, even drawing, and um, even the context of how we learn and how reading can make people better. And so now I have mentioned about struggles or gaps. And yes, today we'll be talking about first the struggles. Okay, para po siyang, well, for those who are teaching English and for those who are familiar with this, in every story or in every part of the plot, there is what we call the conflict. Okay, there's what we call the conflict, and so we can also apply that in real life situations, especially in the reading milestones of our children, of our learners. So there is an external struggle when there is difficulty um, in any or most of the following. So the first one is if there's difficulty breaking apart and manipulating the sounds in words or the phonemic awareness, then there is a gap. Especially this happens or tinuturo po ito sa, well, sa preschool and then sa early stages ng grade school, sa grade 1 or sa grade 2, or if there is a need. Okay? Again, reading milestones are not limited to a certain grade level only, diba? Because we also have to recognize that our learners are different and they have also different learning milestones. And so, for example, the word cat, okay, the word cat. If the child could not be able to blend the sounds like k at t for cat, then there might be a gap. There might be a struggle already. And then there's also difficulty when the learner cannot or has a hard time acknowledging that certain letters are used to represent certain sounds. Like, for example, the sound of S, like S, and the sound of H, like, then that will form sh. Now, if the student would have a hard time associating those sounds to represent, well, a certain sound, then there might be a struggle. Okay, that's what we call the alphabetic principle. And then also, if there is a challenge in decoding, well, may struggle din po. And then this one, analyzing words and spelling patterns in order to become more efficient at reading words. One example of this is recognizing compound words. Okay? Recognizing compound words or even yung mga root words natin. So, if there is already a challenge in understanding and comprehending with those certain word study techniques or word study lessons, then there must be a struggle. There must be a gap. And then the last one, this one, sight vocabulary. If the child cannot be able to recognize what you present, what word the words that you present, then obviously there's a struggle. And hindi lang po natatapos din yung external struggle. There are still other external struggles are as follows. So the child experiences difficulty in reading if there is limited background knowledge. For example, you mentioned about the word animal. Okay, you mentioned about that. If the child could only say that the animal or an animal is a dog and nothing else, then there must be a problem. There must be a limitation in terms of his or her schema or his background knowledge, meaning limited. And since there is a limitation, it is a struggle. Okay, it is a struggle. There's nothing wrong with having limitations, but again, this is reading, and reading is a multifaceted process. And we hope to see our learners that they have sufficient background knowledge for them to be able to understand what it means to read and understand what it means to communicate. Okay, so there. And then also understanding meaningful word parts yan, so yung root words po. And then syntactic comprehension, so syntax, this is very important. How words are utilized or how words are used in sentences. So for example, sometimes we encounter learners or we encounter students of ours na pag pinapa-recite natin sila or pag nagre-recite sila sa classes natin, hirap na hirap silang mag-express ng thoughts nila. minsan yung mga words nila hindi natin maintindihan kung saan nila napulot, for example, or kung parang minsan nahihilo tayo. Okay? And sometimes, well, I'll be honest, there were times in my life na I would ask myself, anong nangyari? Bakit ganito? Diba? Hindi ba siya nag-aral? Or hindi ba siya willing matuto? Something, I mean, some questions like those. And so, doon papasok yung mga judgment natin about students. But in fact, diba, um, sometimes we do not realize na meron lang talagang gap, diba? Na meron lang talagang struggle. Not all of our learners, but with some of them. Okay? But with some of them. Okay? So, it's important that you're able to address this syntactic comprehension because it is really recognizing that words can contribute in certain sentences. Then also understanding about how print works, and the knowledge of various kinds of text. And so there are different kinds of text. There are poems, novels, short stories, essays. And so if our learning only knows about essay or only knows about, okay, reading is just reading short story. Reading is just reading fiction. Okay, then there must be a gap because reading involves various kinds of text, even non-fiction materials. So yun po. And then there's also struggle in reading if there's difficulty in recognizing that there are various purposes for reading. Reading has its purpose to entertain, reading has its purpose to inform, and reading also has its purpose to persuade or to convince. And then also strategies for constructing meaning from text. So syempre po, if the child or our children could not be able to construct meaning or to derive meaning from text, then obviously po may struggle po. And then additional struggles po there. I just want to highlight understanding and utilizing pragmatic language. So ito po yung tinutukoy ko kanina na if the child, okay, given that the child can read words, given that the child can identify words that we present to them, but for example, if he or she cannot express that or utilize those words and ideas in pragmatic language, then there must be a struggle. I'll give you an example. Let's imagine that I am the student or I am the learner. I am already in, well, I'm already college, for example. Kunyari college, kunyari bata. O kunyari feeling bata. At tapos, balik tayo. Tapos, for example, inutusan ako ng daddy ko na ipaayos yung phone niya. And then ang sabi ng daddy ko sa akin, ipaayos ko, pumunta lang ako sa service center sa mall, hanapin ko yung certain telecommunication provider, and then there, di ba? Ngayon, there will be a gap kung halimbawang pumunta ako sa service center and I don't know, okay, well, I know what will happen, I know what I want, pero I could not be able to express kung ano yung gusto kong ipaayos. If that is the case, there is a gap in utilizing ideas into pragmatic language because I, as a learner, could not be able to, to communicate what I want. I could not be able to interact. And so, meron pong malaking gap doon. And then also connecting to the environment and syempre connecting to people. So, we have to be very considerate that these external struggles exist. Okay? Whether we like it or not, these struggles are existent. And so, hindi pa na, sabi ko nga kanina, hindi po huli, there are always ways or interventions or strategies that we can use so that we would be able to bridge the gaps. Okay. So there you go. So kumbaga, ngayon, what you see now in your screen is this. It isn't as if the words are difficult to identify or understand, but the spaces make you pause between words, which means your reading is less fluent. Well, nababasa ko siya because I can read. Now the question is, do we expect also our readers to read the same way as I did, or to read the same way as you did? For example, if you could be able to understand it. Because if not, okay, if there would be difficulties, it will just be like the gaps in the picture that we need to, that we need to address. So there you go. Struggles are not only limited to external, we also have the internal struggles in reading. So this occurs when the learners have already displayed difficulty in any or most of the following. So, first is motivation to read. If our child does not have motivation to read and motivation to comprehend, if his assumption of reading would be like, well, for me, it's kind of normal because I myself had the same assumption that reading is kind of, if I would read a long story, for me, it is boring. Okay, well, that's a normal assumption, but if there is no more motivation to read or to comprehend, then that is also a struggle. And then if the child has a difficulty in acknowledging his or her experiences, okay, and also acknowledging his or her emotions, then for sure it will be kind of problematic. Kasi nga po, gaya ng sabi ko kanina, in reading, there is an integration of the story clues or the text itself and also the experiences of the learners as reading mirrors one's life. Diba? So kung meron na pong, well, resistance or kung meron na pong ang challenge sa pag-acknowledge ng mga learners natin sa kanilang mga experiences, there must be a gap. And then also, if the child would not want to recognize shift, that he or she can become better, okay, that he can respond rather than react, that instead of hearing from your child or from your learner na, I don't like to read because, well, it's a waste of time, it's a waste of energy. Well, for sure we want to hear or we want to let them realize that reading is something that is contributive to their learning. Pero paano nga po kung hindi yun? Diba? Hindi naman natin pwedeng pilitin. We could not force the reality that we want. But we can always devise ways. We can always aid strategies. We can always support. Okay? Na baka naman, baka sakali na merong mag-iba sa perspective sa mga learners natin when it comes to reading. And, it's a matter of not giving up to them and to the reading as a contributive process. And so now let's define the next important term, which is really part of our discussion or webinar. And the question is, what is intervention? And so intervention is not just giving advice na, okay, nahihirapan yung learners, and so, okay, ito yung dapat mong gawin. No, it's not just like that. Intervention is an action taken to improve a situation. It's also a combination of program elements and strategies designed to produce, okay, behavior changes. And so, kasama talaga yung internal struggles because reading is not just reading outside but reading within. Okay, and for intervention, it should encourage not just learning by doing. Although usually, we encourage our learners to learn by doing. Okay, so if we tell them to read this text and then we give our objectives, but again, it's not the conclusion of this process, diba? Intervention also, or I mean, should also encourage learning by being. What would, how would our readers um, become something in the future? Would they be confident? Would they be compassionate for themselves? Would they feel that they are enough? And so they should also realize, and we should also make them realize that learning is not just learning by doing, but also learning by being. What would make them something better if they read? How would they see themselves better when they read? How would we see ourselves better when we inspire them to read? And all those questions are being questions and not just doing questions. It's not really just about compliance na kailangang matutong magbasa ng bata kasi yun ang kailangan eh. Kasi yun ang standard. Hindi ko sinasabing hindi yon, but hindi lang po yun. Okay? For me, it's more important that we learn, that all of us learn by being. So yun po. On reading intervention, according to instructor Marky Grant, reading difficulties usually begin as early as preschool. I am very concerned with this. Okay. I remember a story of my co-teacher. She mentioned, okay, well, she told me or she expressed a kind of, I'm not sure if that was a rant or that was a sentiment. For me, she was a sentiment. Okay, I'm surfacing my assumptions. It was a sentiment. And the teacher told me that siguro kaya, well, sabi niya, meron daw siyang student na hindi makapagbasa. Ang judgment niya, grade 7 na yung bata pero hindi pa rin marunong magbasa. Kung marunong mang magbasa, hirap na mag-acknowledge ng words. And then, what I did, I calmed her down and told her, baka kasi may gap. Baka kasi merong struggle along the process. Diba? Because it says here, the children who have not mastered reading skills by third grade, okay, by third grade, will continue to fall behind their peers. Kung actually for me nga, hindi third grade, kahit yung sa grade 1 pa lang, which dapat kasi sa grade 1 yung foundation ng learning na set na or kahit na gradual, sana na set na. So for example, kung halimbawa sa journey ng isang bata na nasa grade 1, tapos hindi na clarify or hindi na strengthen yung reading strategies, yung reading approaches, then we don't expect them to become better readers when they reach grade 4 or grade 5. Kasi po, gradual process siya eh. So kung dun pa lang po sa foundation, meron ng gap, how do we expect them to read better? Diba? Kasi may gap nga po eh. Diba? May gap. And so, as a result, they would probably never catch up without the right interventions. Right interventions does not, I mean, do not, well, this does not mean na kailangan perfect. Well, I don't believe that everything is perfect, di ba? Wala namang perfect eh. Pero there are suitable interventions that we can give. Okay? And again, it's a matter of commitment and a matter of willingness to share and to support our learners. So reading interventions are activities and strategies that help struggling readers develop their ability to read. I would want to highlight the word develop. It's not an immediate response. Sabi ko nga, di ba, hindi po siya product. It is a process, and the process can be very challenging. The process can be tiresome. But if we see our learners, if we are committed to see our learners reach their goals to read better, and to become better learners in the future, then these things are possible. Okay, so there you go. And now let me present you the elements of effective reading instruction. Okay, so let's take a deep breath muna po. So baka na-overwhelm po tayo sa info. So let's take a deep breath po. Yan. So, well, by the way, just to share, we can always, whenever we teach, we can always let our learners take deep breaths so that especially pag medyo nakakapagod na yung discussion or yung webinar, we could always allow them to take deep breaths so that you could go back to the same space, okay, to the present, to the now. And so there you go po. And so thank you for allowing yourselves to take deep breaths. And now let's continue by having the elements of effective reading instruction. And so, according to the National Reading Panel or the NRP, these are the elements. So first, an emphasis on oral language to include vocab development. So vocabulary is really part of effective reading instruction. Then yes, ito po yung sasabi natin, phonemic awareness, learning of sight vocabulary, explicit teaching of comprehension strategies, even writing experiences are also part because as what I've mentioned a while ago, reading and writing are connected to each other. Then development of fluent reading with opportunities for both guided and independent reading. Okay, so this is what we call differentiated instruction. Okay, so it doesn't mean that, for example, you are in a class. Okay, for example, you're in a class of 20 to 40 students. We don't expect na lahat sila ay independent learners or lahat sila ay independent readers. Hindi po. Okay, hindi po. Kaya siya challenging kasi hindi lahat ng learners natin or ng readers natin ay independent. And okay, there are a lot of times that we have to incorporate guided reading instructions. Diba? And this will not happen if we don't know how to assess or if we already if you're already having a hard time to assess their reading capabilities. And so it's really a process po. Okay, so there. And then also part of the effective reading instruction is reading at the just right level. What is this? Just right meaning the reading materials that we give them are suitable to their learning capability. And so, gaya ko nga po nung sabi ko, kung nasa isang class sila, di ba, the tendency as well, during the first reading session, okay, so same reading materials yung mga learners natin. Pero paano pag dumating na yung point na ma-realize natin na karamihan sa kanila ay nahihirapang magbasa? Okay, do we just continue to give them the materials na pare-parehas pero yung ibang mga learners hindi makasabay? Or should we allow ourselves to do differentiated approaches that we allow readers who are struggling to read the materials na tama lang sa kanila or na suitable lang sa reading capability nila. So, mahirap po siya, no? Challenging. Pero, again, di ba? If we wish, if we want, if we are committed to ignite the fire of letting them have the effective reading instruction, possible naman po eh. Kaya naman po. Okay? And again, hindi naman po siya biglaan. It's a gradual process. But again, that gradual process will not happen if we will not act on it and if we will not make a choice for that to happen. And then also, to add, there's also access to a wide range of reading materials. And so let's not encourage our learners to be just limited to use the internet. Kasi, well, I understand na sa ngayon dahil may limitations sa pandemic, most of them would rely on the internet. Pero baka naman meron sila sa mga bahay nila na mga reading materials that would help them become better readers. So let's not encourage them to be limited in a certain material. Let's allow them to discover, to expand their horizon as to their reading capability and reading improvement. And so let me present you a healthy literacy diet. Buti pa si literacy ay healthy. No, I'm just kidding. And so, for this healthy literacy diet, we have oral language. Ito po yung mga na-mention ko rin kanina. Okay? So, actually, you can always just go back to this YouTube presentation or to this VIBAL presentation. And so, dito po nakalagay yung mga sub concepts, okay, that would present these literacy concepts or literacy diet. So, yun po. Okay. And there you go. So, ngayon, let's go now to the intervention guide. Okay, so before we have the intervention approaches, let's just be guided first. Kasi, nonsense naman that we give intervention if we don't know the profile of reading difficulty and identifying yung gaps ng learners natin. So this is from the simple view of, this is the simple view of reading, okay, that has been used to identify 4 profiles. Actually, na-share ko na po ito last webinar ko. There are 4 profiles of young learners. A profile for students who are at or above grade level, and 3 common profiles of students with with reading difficulties. Kaya na-represent ko lang po ay yung 4 po na 4 na uri. So students who have, okay, first one, students who have good or adequate language comprehension and good or adequate decoding. So dito po, hindi ko sinasabing wala na totally problema kasi po, learning is dynamic and so maaari po na in a certain period of time, meron pong ma-surface na gap, diba? Meron pong ma-discover na gap. So, or kumbaga, ang term ko dyan is merong tagas, di ba? But again, hindi naman po lahat ng tagas ay hindi nasusolusyonan, di ba? Kaya nga po nandito tayo as teachers to support. Well, but for sure, children with this profile are most likely at or above grade level. Kaya na nila, di ba? Kailangan na lang ng enrichment para mas gumaling pa sila, para mas sustain yung kanilang skills in reading. Well, now, let's also face it, there are also students who have good language comprehension, okay? So they could be able to comprehend, but poor word recognition. Naiintindihan nila yung mga bagay-bagay. Diba? They know how to go to to a certain service center. Gaya yung example ko kanina. Pero merong poor word recognition. Okay? Halimbawa, pinakita na nung crew yung kailangan niyang gawin. Or for example, yung agreement, warranty agreement, or kung ano pa man yun. Tapos halimbawa, hindi niya ma-recognize yung mga words or hindi niya alam yung ibig sabihin ng warranty or nung license agreement. Okay, then there must be a problem. Okay? There must be a struggle. This profile is term-specific word recognition difficulties or the SWRD because the child's reading problems are specific to word recognition, not language comprehension. Ano po yung kailangan? Phonics intervention po ang kailangan, which is for me contributive to to aid struggling readers. So later we'll talk about that. Then we also have students who have, ito naman po baliktad, poor language comprehension but good in word recognition. So they could be able to identify words, but they could not be able to comprehend. They could not be able to understand what each word means. And they could not be able to communicate because hindi nga po nila maintindihan yung mga words. Diba? So meron din pong gap. Okay? So this is what we call the SCD or the Specific Comprehension Difficulty. Ano po yung kailangang intervention? Kailangan ng intervention in terms of comprehension, vocabs, background knowledge, and also making inferences. So there po. And then the last one, students who have weaknesses in both language comprehension and word recognition. So parehas po. This is what we call the MRD or the mixed reading difficulties because the reading problems include both the word recognition and also comprehension. So ano pong kailangang intervention? Well, kailangan po ng integration ng parehas na intervention. Yung phonics intervention and yung comprehension intervention. Challenging? Yes, challenging. Diba? Parang ang bigat, parang burden. But for me, it will never be a burden if there is commitment and if there is the willingness to spark the fire. Okay? So, kumbaga, allow lang, di ba? Allow lang and walang iwanan in terms of guiding our learners and supporting them as well. And so, let's go now to our main discussion. Okay, let's now have the intervention strategies and activities to help struggling readers. So before I present the interventions, okay, let me now go back. Actually, I presented this last webinar. Okay, so this is the theory U. This is proposed or pioneered by Dr. Otto Scharmer. Ang goal na dito sa pag-present ng theory U is actually ang purpose talaga nito is for the big scale companies to use their maybe beliefs in the past or knowledge in the past, okay, to create something new or to co-create something better in the future. That's why it is in you, diba? And this is related, for me, this is really related to us, teachers, okay, reading teachers, because we will always start with sensing. Okay, so focus pa tayo sa sensing. Sensing is transforming perception. Kumbaga, mangangapa tayo. For sure, lahat po tayo nung nalaman natin na kailangan nating magturo online or most of us, we need to teach online or we need to apply blended instruction, for example, nangapa tayo, di ba? Ganon din po yung feeling na nagtuturo tayo sa mga readers natin na nasa struggle. Mangangapa tayo. Hindi lang po sila yung mangangapa. Let us also accept, us also recognize na tayo rin po mangangapa because there are some knowledge or there are some strategies that we already know that might not be working anymore sa ngayon, whether we accept it or not. Diba? And the goal of that is to engage in immersive learning opportunities. So it's not negative because a struggle, well, for me, a struggle is a learning opportunity to make things better. Pero kailangan po nating bumaba. So dito po tayo bababa sa presencing. Presencing is letting inner knowledge emerge to retreat and reflection. And so in this part, we ask ourselves, what is my purpose? Why am I here? Why am I teaching reading? Why am I inspiring them to read? Do I really want this? And if you're able to get the answer through reflection, okay, then you are also willing to let go of things that are not anymore working and to move forward to something better and emerge possible, beautiful futures. And dito po papasok yung pataas sa you, realizing it's all about transformation. It's all about creating beautiful futures. And beauty is not just beauty the perfect, but beauty can still be messy, can still be raw. Okay? But as we choose to embody the new in prototypes and create networks of development, then create networks also of improved learning and continued learning, all these things are possible. Diba? So in intervention, we should allow to sense, we should allow to do presencing and to realize that, things will become better. Okay? It doesn't mean that if we say things that things will become better, yung struggling reader magiging advanced reader. Hindi po ganon. It's a gradual process po. And so now, let me present you the first strategy. Okay, teach the essentials, the importance. So Ito nga po yung phonemic awareness. Phonemic awareness for those who are teaching in kindergarten and first grade, my only hope for you is to have that passion to teach this one, to teach the essentials, the phonics instruction, okay, and also integrated instruction in fluency, vocabs, and comprehension. Okay, effective reading teachers teach skills, strategies, and concepts. So skills are the things students learn to do. So in reading, students must learn skills such as, yun nga po yung gaya ko sabi ko kanina, yung blending ng sounds. So for example, for the word cat, we teach them not just by saying that, okay, this is cat. Okay, say cat. Hindi lang po ganoon ang reading. We have to allow them to experience it, to experience the sounds. Okay? To experience sounding words as k at t for cat. Diba? So, tiyagaan po talaga siya. Okay, I am telling you, tiyagaan po talaga siya. But I am also telling you na pag nakuha po nila and pag dumating sila sa certain level at nakapagbasa po sila ng maayos, it will all be worth it. Fruitful po yung pagod. So yun po. Strategies also are routines or plans of action that can be used to accomplish a goal or work through difficulty. So for example, strategies for spelling unknown words. Okay? But again, wag po natin biglain tong strategy na kailangan yung ibigay kaagad natin yung unfamiliar words. Diba? Mag-sensing po tayo. Okay? Mag-sensing po tayo. In systems thinking, we have what we call, we have what we call surfacing assumptions. Surface po muna natin yung assumption natin. Diba? Kung kaya ba, or kung hindi man kaya, wag po nating biglain. Dahan-dahan lang po. Okay, so yun po. And then also strategies to help them write summaries of paragraphs. Ito po yung sa advanced level na po. And other kinds of strategies that would help them become better readers. And then the last essential is our concepts. Concepts are background knowledge related to reading and to the topics they are reading about. But it doesn't mean that we always spoon feed. Okay? Let's allow our learners to discover a lot of stuff. Hindi lang naman po sa teacher sa kasalalay ang lahat. They have their parents, they have their guardians, they also have people who surround them. And so we could always inspire these people to give our children or our learners support. Later, pag-uusapan po natin yung about sa collaboration. But yes, hindi po siya biglaan. Background knowledge, gradual po yung pag-develop po niyan. Now, let's go to the next approach or the next strategy or intervention. This is initiating sight vocabulary. Many struggling readers have phonological processing difficulties, and there is evidence that skilled readers access a store of words or visual patterns when reading. So these are the high frequency words. Okay, so struggling readers often read less and have less exposure to print. And this one, I want to focus on this. The more a student reads, the greater their chances of automatically recognizing it. Oo naman po. Syempre, the more they are exposed to words, the bigger chances that they become, well, good readers or developing readers. However, it's not only limited to this. It is recommended that teachers teach high-frequency words to struggling readers to the point of automaticity na magiging automatic na lang sa kanila yung sight words. Now, I'll give you a tip. For you to be able to let them learn from sight words, allow yourselves to connect to your students. Okay? Allow yourselves to know their experiences. Hindi naman po tayo mangingialam ng mga personal experiences nila. But just, allow yourselves to be open and to be transparent as to na gusto nung kumonect sa mga learners natin. Diba? Because for me, it's all about connecting to them. And so, it's better to give sight words that seem interesting to them or that seem that connects to their experiences po. So yun, so gaya these are just examples, and also sight word, na-share ko na rin po to sa last webinar ko. So sight words instruction increases a child's familiarity with the high frequency words. Intervention techniques can be spell reading and the arm tapping. So spell reading, okay, the child says the word and spells out the letters, then reads the word again. For example, the word is bat or cat, okay, and then the child will spell each letter C-A-T and then reads the word again. So may connection po ng letters and no sounds. Then yung na-share ko na rin po last time yung arm tapping, like the child says the word and then spells out the letters. Like for example, the word apple, A-P-P-L-E. And then for example, na-misspell nung learner natin, na sabi niya na A-P-L-E. Ano yung observation doon? Ang observation doon is yung number of taps. Kasi yung correct spelling ng apple, merong 5 taps kasi merong 5 letters or merong 5 sounds. Diba? Pero dahil nga merong gap sa spelling, merong isang letter na kulang, we could process it to our learners. How many taps did you make? And then the student will say, or the pupil will say, teacher, I only had 4 taps. Why did you have 5, teacher? And then because it's APPLE. You lacked one letter. So, ganun po siya. Okay, so we can always process these things. So, it's very important that we also process intervention techniques. Hindi yung nakapagbigay tayo ng technique and then yun na yung end. It's not just that. We have to process it to our learners. So, yun po. And then another strategy is incorporating word study. Word study is an approach that provides students with opportunities to investigate and understand the patterns in words. Example, after collecting many words containing the letter C, letter lang po, letter C, students discovered that the sound of k, okay, is usually hard when followed by consonants. For example, the words clue, and crayon. Ba? There's like, there's something na parang mahirap i-pronounce. Unlike, for example, if we let them read the letter C as S with a sound, okay, like for example, circus, celery, cycle, mas fluid. And so let's allow ourselves to process them, to process this word study. Now, I'll give you some activities that we can do. So we can initiate building sentences with word cards. So for word study, ito po yung sinasabi ko kaninang syntactic comprehension. So meron kang mga words na, well, syempre sa physical setting, pwedeng hindi siya possible kasi nga po, may limitation sa pandemic. Pero halimbawa, kung nag-tutor ka, di ba, sa isang bata na struggle sa reading, you can do this. And also, you can also do this online. Mayroon pong mga software, marami pong software applications that would allow you to, to do this. So word cards, may mga words na naka-jumble and allow them to, to express a certain thought using those words. Diba? If they're able to express something beautiful or something that is understandable, then maybe yes, we were able to reach our goal for them to build sentences with word cards. So that's part of that's one of the strategies for word study. Another one also is this simple word puzzle. So for example, we have an, at, had, and then you have A to Z letters. And if you put a certain letter or if you connect or insert a certain letter dun sa dalawang letters, halimbawa dun sa an, then if we put M like man, okay, let's process the meaning of that word. Diba? And let's allow ourselves to connect it with our learners' personal experiences. And then, papilalitan natin yung M ng C, which will be can, pag-iiba rin ang meaning nun. And so, we allow ourselves to process again. So, we can always use these two strategies or activities, building sentences with word cards and then simple word puzzles for word study. Okay, so there. Now, let's go to the next one, enrich vocabulary skills. For me, this is very important because if the learner has a difficulty in using words because hindi niya alam yung meaning ng word, there is a struggle, diba? So weak vocabulary skills impact on reading comprehension and in the long run, okay, context, okay, and communication to the outside world. For intervention, assign words that the learners need to define. Okay, so pwede kang magbigay or mag-assign ng about 10 words to define. Okay? But make sure na pag magpapa-define ka ng words, okay, make sure na include mo rin yung part of speech. Kasi meron pong mga words, halimbawa, yung the word present or present, di ba? So, same spelling siya, pero iba-iba yung meaning niya at ang daming meaning ng word na yun. And so, allow them, siguro kung ako yung teacher, start by providing first the part of speech na kailangan nilang maging guided. Halimbawa, yung present, ang nilagay mo lang doon is present as adjective. Okay, so adjective yung part of speech. And so, it will be easier for them to look for the meaning of the word kasi meron ka ng guide with regard to the part of speech. However, if you feel that your readers are already developing and go into the advanced level already, you can also level up yung pagbigay ng vocab exercises for them. But for me, before you let your students do this, okay, mag-GRR1 po tayo. GRR stands for Gradual Release of Responsibility. Diba? Let's show, ipakita po muna natin kung paano siya ginagawa. Hindi po yung bibiglain po natin silang gawin yon nang wala silang kaalam-alam kung paano gawin. Yes, I've told you na licensing mga ngapa, pero wag naman po nating hayaan na mga pa, yung mga learners natin nang hindi talaga nila alam yung gagawin. Diba? Let's be in integrity of what we do po as teachers, or I should say as mentors and facilitators of learning. And then, well, at the end of each week, at the end of the week or month, we could encourage them to compile the defined words para, di ba, may babalikan silang list. Di ba? Tapos, pag hindi pa na sila ganun ka-familiar, at least pwede nilang dalhin lagi yung papel na yun, or, well, dahil techie na yung mga bata ngayon, for those who have, well, resources, okay, then they could just always go back to the list of these words and go back also to the meaning of each word. So yun po, enrich na po natin yung skills, yung vocabulary skills ng mga learners natin. And then the next one is devise purposeful speaking and listening activities. So ano po itong mga to? Ito yung reading books aloud and discussing them, facilitating activities to develop and extend expressive and receptive language, and collaborative learning. Okay, so teachers modeling inference making by thinking aloud. Like, minsan mahihiya tayo na gumawa ng thinking aloud, pero for me, effective siya. Halimbawa, ako si teacher, mag-GRR1 ako or gradual release of responsibility level 1 ako. And so, papakita ko sa kanila kung paano yung reading process na, how to come up or how to identify or how to make inferences. In making inferences, I have to know the story clues. And so, where would I get the story clues? Okay, I'll focus first with the first paragraph. And then, I'll focus to the next. So, ganun po. Pinapakita po natin sa mga learners natin kung paano siya gagawin. Kunyari, tayo po yung mga learners mismo. So, that's what we call modeling. Okay? And modeling is well, for me, it's a critical part or a critical step para mas ma-encourage natin yung mga learners nating matuto. Okay. And then also structured questioning, probing, processing to develop comprehension. We have the questions. When we process things with our students, 3 questions po yung mahalaga. Okay? I'm not saying na limited, pero mahalaga. So you can always ask them what? And then, kung nasagot na yon, so what? Anong meron doon? And then now what? Ano yung magiging epekto pag nalaman mo yun? Now what? Are you willing to move forward with that? So we can always process that. Pero again, wag po natin bibiglain yung mga learners natin. Okay, let's surface our assumptions. Okay? And then also brainstorming. Okay, so reading is connected to writing as learners can always do brainstorming, especially when they are about to write something or when they are about to write their ideas and then eventually communicate it through reading. Let's allow brainstorming po. Diba? Again, there are a lot of assumptions in this world. There are a lot of ideas. Let's, utilize those by being with our learners, by being with them. Okay, one of the example of this one is, well, read aloud. Well, this is my most favorite reading intervention. Okay, but this is not the best kasi the word best is subjective. Okay, so there you go. According to Reading Rockets, read aloud builds many important foundational skills. So hindi lang po reading yung na-improve niya, also speaking and also listening. When teachers read aloud, they are demonstrating the connection between oral and written language. And so, if you feel that your readers are ready to do this, then yes, you can always incorporate read aloud sessions, because I feel that when you allow them to be exposed to words, you allow them to be exposed to discovering characters, to discovering setting, for example, or discovering that plots or the parts of the plot affect the whole. Diba? If we're able to, to inspire our learners or readers to get these things or to achieve these things, then pwede natin silang i-allow to do the read aloud. Pero again, dahan-dahan lang po, gradual po. Okay, let me just share with you the steps in facilitating read aloud sessions. Okay, and so In read aloud sessions, pre-reading first. So show the book and state the title and author, and then give a short background about the book and ask motivational questions. Do we expect our learners na gagawin nila kaagad ito? Well, hindi po, because we have to do it first. Okay, we have to model it first, how it's done. And then also reading proper. So in reading proper, we can always tell them that it's not just reading that, for example, meron ng book, hindi lang po siya basta binabasa yung text. They could already unlock difficulties. Itong difficulties na po ito po yung mga vocabulary words or words which seem unfamiliar. So, when students prepare for their read aloud session, pwede na natin silang ma-encourage, 'di ba, to unlock difficulties nung nasa text. 'Di ba? And ang maganda doon, two-way process siya. Nalaman na niya yung meaning ng word na yun kasi nga difficulty siya or unfamiliar word siya. And at the same time, pag ginawa niya yung read aloud, 'di ba? With his or her classmates, makakapag-share pa siya ng information sa kung ano ba yung meaning ng word na yon. 'Di ba? It's a two-way process. It's a give and take process. How beautiful it is, 'di ba? And so, in reading proper, it's also continuing asking questions that can be relevant to the story's transition or flow and message. But again, let's do it first, 'di ba? Let's model how it is done. Okay? Paano ba magkakaroon ng transition by asking questions when we do the read aloud? And then the last step is post-reading. So post-reading is you process the story. So ito po yung mga questions na what, so what, and now what. So let's not be contented na after ng read aloud, it's done. Okay? After na mabasa nung students natin, it's done. Okay? So allow them, okay, and let's encourage our learners to process what they've read by asking these questions, what, so what, and now what. But again, wag po natin bibiglain. Okay? And dahan-dahan lang po, diba? Kumbaga, service din po natin yung assumptions natin sa kanila and yung assumptions nila. Kumbaga, dapat po nag-drive po yung assumptions natin at yung assumptions ng mga learners natin para maganda rin po, hindi lang yung kalalabasan, pero maganda rin po at productive and harmonious yung reading process. So, that is for the read aloud. So, there you go. So, these are just some recommendations. Now, for facilitating read aloud sessions, students are not asked to read aloud from unfamiliar text. So, yun nga po siya sabi ko, huwag natin silang biglain nung text na unfamiliar sila or halimbawa with regard to experiences na meron silang, well, sabihin natin trauma, okay, sa certain story na yun or pag nakita pa lang nila yung title, parang ayaw na nila. Mami-feel naman po natin yun. Diba? Let's just connect to them, to our readers or learners. And also, let's give them something na suitable sa, hindi po sa age. For me kasi, it's not just being, what do you call this? Hindi lang po siya about sa pagiging suitable or pag-suit sa age po. Pero pag-suit po sa reading capability po ng mga learners natin. So, yun po. So, kailangan po nating i-take into consideration yung mga bagay na po ito so that we would be able to do read aloud sessions, meaningful read aloud sessions. So, yun po. Next. Now, let me present you strategies naman with systems thinking to help struggling readers. Okay, so what is systems thinking? Systems thinking is an approach that enables people, not just students, but us, okay, learners, parents, teachers, administrators, to see things in different perspectives, okay, to create leverage for learning, to surface assumptions, to check patterns of behavior, to check our mental models or belief system, so that we would be able to create good results or better results. And now let me present you a systems thinking tool, the iceberg model. What do we know about an iceberg? Okay, so an iceberg is, well, in an iceberg, you would see the tip of an iceberg. But the question is, yun lang ba yun? Diba? Siyempre, hindi po. So, sa iceberg, meron po siyang bottom part which are also essential. So, doon sa tip po ng iceberg, we have events. So, event is what is happening. And then, pababa po, na hindi na po masyado nakikita sa iceberg, ito po yung patterns of behavior. Kasi usually, sa classes natin, diba, ang nakikita lang natin is how students behave. But sometimes, we don't understand why they are behaving like that. Or, if the context is about struggling readers, diba, kung yun yung event natin, Diba? Bakit ba sila nag-struggle? Ano yung patterns that, that contribute to this struggle? And then also we have the structure. Ano ang kulang sa structure? Ano yung hindi ganun kaganda sa structure na kailangan i-improve, 'di ba? And it will all of these things, events, patterns of behavior, system structure will boil down to mental models. Mental models are our belief systems, yung beliefs natin, paniniwala natin. Di ba? What values, assumptions, beliefs shape the system. Like for example, yeah, ang event natin, struggling readers. So, yun po yung nakikita natin, di ba? Struggling readers, nakaka-overwhelm kasi ang daming readers na nakaka-experience ng difficulty. So, ano kaya yung pattern? So, if we just come to think of it, if we just allow ourselves to analyze, not really analyze, but to understand what's happening. Okay, so for sure, readers experience difficulty in synchronous and asynchronous environments. Kaya nga sila struggling readers kasi nga may difficulty. But ano yung meron sa structure? Diba? Ano yung mali sa structure? Well, yun yung kailangan nating i-figure out. Diba? Yun yung kailangan nating i-assess. Yun yung kailangan nating malaman. Pero hindi natin malalaman yung bagay na yun kung hindi rin po klaro yung belief or yung paniniwala. Diba? Kung ang paniniwala natin ay pare-parehas, for example, ang mental model natin, na ang learners natin or ang readers natin ay pare-parehas dapat. Okay, na pag halimbawa nasa grade 5 ang learner or reader, dapat pang grade 5 din yung reading capability niya. Paano kung yung paniniwalang yun ay hindi applicable sa lahat? Pwede kasing applicable naman sa lahat na nakataong lahat ng learners natin or readers natin ay meron na silang pang on level naman yung reading capability nila. Pwedeng ganun. Pero paano nga kung hindi? Diba? So, syempre, kung may mag-iiba sa mental model natin or sa belief system natin, or if we choose to move forward from the mental models that are not anymore working, for sure may mag-iiba rin po sa pag-create ng leverage. Yung starting point, di ba? Yung small things that would create something big, yun po yung leverage eh. So, for sure may mag-iiba sa pag-create natin ng structure na, okay, I have to devise a structure that would allow my learners of different reading capabilities, diba, to understand what reading is and to understand the text, diba? And so there are chances that if we do that, or if we learn by doing and learn by being, we would be able to turn struggling readers, diba, to developing readers. Okay, that's iceberg model po. And so let me use systems thinking, specifically the iceberg, for the last set of intervention instructions or strategies that I would share. Number 6 is incorporate differentiated instruction. So ito po yung sinasabi ko na we don't expect our learners share the same pace of reading capability. Okay, so there. So gamit po tayo ulit ng iceberg. So same situation, di ba? Struggling readers, yung event na nakikita natin, ano yung patterns of behavior, ganun pa rin po. They experience difficulty in synchronous and asynchronous environments. So, kung ito po yung event at ito po yung pattern, diba, ano kaya yung structure na maganda or yung structure that would help them, hindi naman not experience difficulty, pero help bridge the gap? And the answer is differentiated instruction. Pero hindi mo magiging possible itong sinasabi nating DI or differentiated instruction, okay, kung halimbawang ang mental model natin ay pare-parehas sila ng milestones sa pinanggalingan. But if we just choose to shift our mental models or beliefs that, well, learners don't share the same pace of learning milestones. Hindi po sila pare-parehas. Kaya nga po, dahil alam na natin, hindi sila pare-parehas ng milestones. And so, gagamit ako ng DI. Yun yung magiging structure ko. Para yung pattern, maaaring yung iba mahirapan pa rin, pero at least gradual na mabibridge yung gap. And so, ang goal ko ngayon na makitang event is that yung mga struggling readers, maaaring struggling pa rin sila, pero I would be patient. Diba? I would be patient na gawin tong bagay na to, itong differentiated instruction, para itong mga struggling readers na to, they become better readers. They become developing readers. Ang sarap po sa pakiramdam na yung mga readers natin na na merong mga paniniwala na hindi na sila matuto magbasa or na hanggang ganun na lang sila. Tapos biglang mag-iiba sa tulong natin. and they would eventually believe in themselves, and they could develop their reading skills. That's really beautiful. So therefore, now let's continue with the seventh intervention. Make instruction more explicit. So ito po yung tinutukoy ko kaninang GRR. So GRR1 is not the anger GRR. Okay, so let's not make it GRRRR like grr. Okay, so let's not have reading as something that could trigger anger in us. Okay, let's just continue loving what we do. Pero hindi naman po siya madali, di ba? I could not dictate you to love what you do kung, di ba, kung mayroong struggle. Allow yourself to experience it. Allow yourself to do sensing, presencing, and transforming. Now, what are these GRR? So GRR1, gradual release of responsibility 1, I do it, gagawin ko, imamodel ko, I could do think aloud, and then you watch. Don't let them like ask questions yet. Sabihin mo lang sa kanila, panoorin nila yung gagawin ko, kasi eventually gagawin niya rin siya. Or oobserbahan nyo din siya later. That is GRR1. GRR2, I do it, gagawin ko siya, and then allow your learners help you. As if hindi mo alam. Okay? Well, sabi nga nila, teachers are great actors. Well, I agree because let's hindi naman magkunyari or magkunwari rather, but allow your learners to help you. Diba? Allow your learners to support you as well. Okay? Maaring alam natin yung gagawin natin because for sure dapat nga po sabi ko, di ba, mayroon tayong integrity sa ginagawa natin. However, let's also allow them to experience this process. Na they could help. They could contribute. That is GRR2. GRR3, you do it, I help. Okay. Ngayon, kumbaga sa pageants, papasa mo yung corona. Papasa mo yung corona. Pero, kumbaga, dahan-dahan na pagpasa mo ng corona. You do it, okay, gagawin nila, pero tutulungan muna kita. Hindi yung you do it, bahala ka na. Yeah? You do it, and then you help them. You help your learners. Diba? Unti-unti. Diba? Unti-unti. For sure, mga ngapa yung mga yan eh. Yung iba dyan matatakot, mag-hesitate. Pero, if they feel na handa kang tumulong, handa kang alam mo yun, yung mga words na, nandito lang ako. Diba? I'm just here to support you. Diba? It would make them become more motivated, diba, to do this GRR3 or to incorporate this GRR3 in their learning or reading milestone. And then GRR4, ito na yung independence. Okay? Pero, syempre, let's check kung nag-guide, kung kumbaga okay na sa kanila yung GRR1, GRR2, and then GRR3. Because GRR4, you do it, okay? I watch. Hindi po you do it, bahala ka na. You do it, I watch. Diba? And then we give feedback. Okay? And this is not, and if we stop with GRR4, or if we conclude with GRR4, it doesn't stop there. Kasi marirealize natin, hindi pa rin pala. Kulang pa din, or meron pa rin gap. Paano yun? Balik po tayo sa GRR1. Diba? It could be tiring, but again, let's see ourselves committed to this. Because ang gulang naman natin, kaya tayo nandito, and kaya rin tayo nag-say ng yes. Gusto natin maramdaman na yung mga readers natin, hindi sila nag-iisa, na kahit ang struggle sila, they can be better versions of themselves with our help and with our guidance. So, there you go. So, for me, the key here is teachers demonstrate and clearly explain what they need to learn. And also, don't forget to share the objectives. Diba? Kasi nonsense, halimbawa na, okay, ginawa mo yung GRR 1, 2, 3, and 4, pero yung learners, hindi nila alam yung purpose. Kaya dapat, sa una pa lang, klaro na sa kanila kung ano yung purpose, kung bakit nila ginagawa. And dapat din, as teachers or as people who initiate the activity, dapat klaro din po sa atin yung purpose. Bakit ba natin to pinapagawa? Bakit ba natin to gustong i-incorporate? Ano ba yung nakikita natin sa mga learners natin? Diba? How would they become? What and how would they become when I incorporate this? Is this worth the energy of the class? Is this worth the energy of the instruction? If it is not, then continue surfacing assumptions. If it is, then go, have the courage. Diba? Just have the courage. Well, kung may makamali man or kung may kulang, may gap, then you can always move forward. Hindi naman huli. Wala namang period eh. Laging may ellipsis. Diba? In terms of reading. Because again, it's not a product. It is a process. It is a process. Gaps are present, di ba? Challenges are present, but hope is also present. Success is also present in the end. Di ba? So, yun po. So, for the iceberg model, okay, so struggling leader, so yun po yung event natin. And then, ganun pa rin po, yung pattern is that they experience difficulty. But for the structure, explicit instruction, di ba? If we're able to model what they need to do and what they need to be, then things might get better. Di ba? Maaring hindi sila maka-experience ng masyadong difficulty kasi na-explain naman natin ng maayos eh. Naipakita natin ng maayos kung paano nila gagawin, step by step. At ano yung mental model natin dyan? Well, we're able to have the structure of explicit instruction because alam natin that we teachers are committed to modeling learning experiences. Diba? That we can always do explicit instruction kasi sa pananaw natin, sa puso natin, we are committed. We are committed to model these experiences that would translate something, to our learners. That eventually, once we model it, they will get it. Kung hindi man nila makuha, let's not be tired of modeling it. Diba? Until such time na makuha nila. And I'm telling you, it's all worth it. It's all worth it. One activity that you can do is reciprocal teaching. So reciprocal teaching refers to an instructional activity in which students become the teacher. But again, let's not do it immediately. Yeah? So for example, we have already done GRR 1, 2, 3, and 4. We can also do this, like teachers model, and help students learn to guide group discussions using 4 strategies. And these strategies are, well, summarizing, question generating, clarifying, and predicting. Once students have learned the strategies, they take turns assuming the role of teacher. So meron, kumbaga, ang term ko dito, learning hats. Okay. Merong isa in charge sa summarizing, isa sa questions, isa sa clarifications, isa sa prediction. Okay, so ganun. And pwede po silang mag-take turns in terms of their roles. Why apply reciprocal teaching? It encourages students to think about their own thought process. Diba? Kasi nga pinakita mo yung thought process mo as a teacher. And then if you're able to translate that, then it will encourage them na, okay, I can do this pala. Diba? I have my own thought process and pwede ko rin siyang ma-share sa iba. Diba? Ganda. Ang ganda no na napapasa nila yung learning. And it also helps students learn to be actively involved and monitor their comprehension. That our learners can monitor their own comprehension. Diba? It also teaches students to ask questions during reading and helps make the text more comprehensive. Nag-level up na po. Dahil nga, we allowed our mental model to shift from something na hindi tayo committed to do the modeling to something na committed tayo. And committed tayo magbigay ng explicit instruction, see, they can apply reciprocal teaching. Diba? And it's a process. So yun na nga po, how to use reciprocal teaching, they can always take turns. So yan dyan po yung mga roles sila. So you can just always go back in this presentation so that maklarify kung ano ba yung ginagawa ng summarizer, ano ba yung ginagawa ng questioner, ano ba yung ginagawa ng clarifier, and then ano rin ba yung ginagawa ng predictor. Okay, the next strategy is, or the next intervention is to improve assessment. So there. So the Education Endowment Foundation emphasize the importance, emphasizes the importance, okay, di ba kinarek ko rin yung sarili ko. So, emphasizes the importance of quality assessment information to inform intervention. Segue lang po, hindi po masama na minsan kinokorek natin yung mga sarili natin in terms of grammar because that is part of reading milestone. Okay, that is part of reading milestone. If we're able to recognize, teka lang, merong gap, merong typographical error or whatever error that is, if you're able to identify na, teka lang, may mali. Pero you're able to bridge the gap. Hindi maganda. Diba? Maganda because alam mo na as teachers din, natututo rin tayo. Diba? Hindi naman ibig sabihin na dahil teachers tayo, perfect tayo, or alam na natin lahat. Hindi po yun. Nangangapa tayo, nagkakamali rin po tayo, but we can always choose to move forward from our mistakes and from our shortcomings. Now, let's go back to assessment. So ito po yung pinag-usapan natin nung nakaraang webinar ko. So it's about assessment. So very important po yung assessment because how would we know if our learners are falling back? Diba? Or if our learners are falling back, falling apart, struggle kung hindi po tayo mag-a-assess. Okay, so usually these are the word reading, spelling, and reading comprehension that form the core of a thorough assessment of literacy difficulties. And then ito pa, testing does not necessarily require the administration of standardized tests. Hindi po lahat ng assessment ay pen and paper. Diba? Gone were the traditional days na puro pen and paper. I'm not saying na mali po yung pen and paper. Part pa rin po siya. Pero balansehin po natin yung paggamit ng standardized test kasi, okay, well, let me change the comma to period. Ayan, kinareka na naman ng sarili ko po in terms of the punctuation. Okay, teachers can also make good use of observational and criteria reference tests. Diba? Ano itong mga to? Ito yung mga running records, or test of sight vocabulary knowledge, or yung phonic knowledge, yung pagbibigay ng sight words mismo. Diba, hindi naman siya pen and paper eh. Diba? Hindi naman siya pen and paper. Yung read aloud, hindi rin siya pen and paper, pero pwede siyang assessment, and those assessment strategies can be improved. So, yun po. Now, how could we improve assessment? Well, these are the keynotes. Assess students carefully. Carefully. Okay? Paying attention to student strengths. At wag lang po tayo mag-focus sa strengths po. Let's also focus the difficulties. Kasi yun nga yung goal natin to bridge the gap. We could not be able to bridge the gap kung nire-resist po natin yung difficulties. Diba? Para saan pa yung intervention kung pinapawalang bahala natin na merong difficulties, diba? Nag-exist po sila, whether we like it or not. So, yun po. And then, in improving assessment also, we collect data, reliable data, from a range of sources. We don't just rely on, on one or on a single datum, diba? We need to, to check and to verify from different data available. Then, if we're able to collect the data, identify the greatest area of need. Sa panahong ito, sa circumstance na ito, ano ba yung greatest need ng learner na ito, or ng reader na ito, or yung set of readers na ito? Ano ba yung kailangan nilang i-prioritize? But again, we don't do it by force. Let's also allow them to surface their assumptions. Na baka kasi yun naman yung talaga yung need nila. So, dahil yun ang need nila, okay, mag-meet halfway tayo as teachers or as facilitators. Then choose key skill areas to develop. So, to make it simple, sana po hindi po, well, sorry for the term, sana po hindi sabog. Okay, sana po hindi po sabog yung pag-assess natin. When we assess, klaro din po dapat sa atin kung ano pa yung gusto natin i-assess. Do we want to assess them in understanding characters ba? Understanding setting ba? Summarizing ba? Note-taking ba? Or kung ano pang gusto nating, kung ano yung ramdam natin na strength na kailangan ma-develop, or yung skill na kailangan ma-develop. So, yun. And then, focus on those key skills for the duration of the intervention. Make use of the student support file. This is all about support. And so, let's, as teachers, let's be prepared by having support file. Para meron po tayong pwedeng balik-balikan. Meron po tayong pwedeng balik-balikan. Na-monitor natin yung progress nila. Okay? Paano pwedeng mangyari to? Well, sa mga online platforms ngayon, gaya ng Zoom, or for example, Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, meron naman pong record Pwede po natin i-record yung mga sessions natin. And so, if I were you, I would suggest na i-record po natin para na monitor po natin kung paano yung mga learners natin nagpo-progress from time to time. Okay? So, yun po. And then, use pre- and post measures to establish the current level of performance and yan nga, to monitor progress. So ito po yung mga ilan sa mga halimbawa ng assessment. So pwede po tayong mag-provide, well, this is suitable for yung mga lower levels po, or yung sa mga preschool or preschool, kinder, pares lang pala. I mean, preschool and then grade 1, grade 2. Yan, session 1, and then reading, and then spelling. For example, guard, the word guard. Are they able to read the word guard? Are they able to spell it? Diba? So, wag po tayong maging limited sa reading. Diba? Kailangan din po, part din po yun ng spelling. And kung possible, kung pwede nang i-level up, pati yung definition ng guard or yung meaning ng guard and how it is applied in social context. And also the other words here, height, cue, straight, weird, strength, weight, true, and shoes. Diba? So, madami pong mga facets na pwedeng i-involve, pero ito pong checklist na to, kung napansin nyo, reading and spelling lang. Kasi nga, gradual po, gradual release of responsibility. Huwag po nating biglain. If we feel that they are ready, then we can add other facets of reading. So, yun po. And then, again, we also have consonant, vowel, ito po. So, kung napansin nyo, ito yung score, 5, and then, if they're able to read it, then we record it. So, yun po. Okay, so yun. Okay, we're almost done. Let's take a deep breath, guys. Okay, so number 9. Okay, all of these will not be possible if we do not motivate and engage learners to read. Okay, di ba nga po internal conflict siya or internal struggle po if they don't have the motivation to read. And so, the following approaches are recommended. First, make literacy experiences relevant to students' interests. Let's take time to know our students. Let's take time to connect with them. Diba? Pero wag naman din pong too much. Okay? Meron din po, dapat po balance din po yung pag-connect natin sa kanila. Kasi dapat din po balance po, parang they still need to recognize us as some, diba, na hindi, for me, I don't want to use the word authority. Although, di ba, usually ginagamit na kailangan teachers sila dapat yung authority. Pero for me, I don't want to use authority. Siguro, it's just a matter of respecting us then, di ba, na nagsusupport ng information or nagsusupport ng learning experiences. So make sure that these experiences are relevant to them, to everyday life, and to current environmental needs. Okay? Why do they need to be motivated based on a given circumstance? Based on a given situation? So, halimbawa, di ba, nagturo ka or nag-share ka ng isang reading material. Yung reading material is about online games. Paano kung halimbawa, lahat ng set of readers mo or karamihan sa kanila, like 80%, are not exposed to online games. Diba? So, hahayaan mo na lang ba na bigay ka ng material or materials na all of the reading materials are about online games. Eh, hindi nga sila exposed doon. Diba? Hindi nga sila exposed. And so, let's also adjust as teachers and facilitators. Let's do DI, differentiated instruction. Then, let's provide a positive learning environment that promotes student autonomy rather, in learning. Okay? But again, yung student autonomy po, wag po tayong ang tawag dito, ma-confuse dito na hindi po sila yung mag-take over ng classes, but we allow them to, to manage their own thought processes, to manage their own learning processes. And then this one is very important. Allow choice. Empower students to make responsible choices. Let's see our learners make responsible choices. But it will not happen if it's not reflected to us. Kaya nga po nang sabi nila, as above, so below. Again, as above, so below. Diba? So let's empower them to make choices, but first, let's allow ourselves to make responsible choices for them, for our learners. And then eventually, it could be translated to these learners making responsible choices. And build strategies such as goal setting, diba? You could even suggest or you could even do a vision board or show a vision board that students would have their own vision for their learning or for their reading milestones. Na by the end of the month, ito yung goal ko as a reader. Ito yung natutunan ko na. Ito yung nakikita kong natutunan ko na as a reader. Di ba nakakatuwa pag halimbawang nakagawa ng isang vision board yung learner natin. Tapos after a month, sometimes hindi po nasusunod yung time, so we could always resurface. Pero, pag dumating yung time na marunong na siya magbasa at marunong na siya mag-comprehend at ang yaman na ng vocabulary niya, then, di ba, parang nakakatuwa. Di ba, nakakatuwa yun na they're able to set their goals and to reach their goals for themselves. And also, we build strategies for self-directed learning and collaborative learning. Then, part or very important in motivating engaging learners to read is through giving feedback. That is motivational. Feedback is not meant to humiliate students po. Feedback that is motivational. Ano ba yung mga magandang questions for feedback? Well, you could always ask, what do you think worked? So before you give your own feedback as a teacher, allow your learners to give feedback about themselves first. Kung paano ba yung naging takbo ng performance nila? And so you ask them, oh, okay, what do you think worked in your performance? Or what do you think worked? And then you ask them also, what do you think could work better? Then dun muna ibigay yung feedback mo. But whenever you give feedback, you ask permission as a sign of respect for your learners as well. Respect is a two-way process. And so ask permission from your learners. Like, could I give feedback? And then if the permission is given, then you give your feedback. You start with what worked and what could work better. Okay, so let's see ourselves letting go of what worked and what didn't work. Instead, we can rephrase words such as what could work better. Na maganda naman yung ginawa pero there could be something better. Di ba? It's a matter also of motivation when we use, harmonious words or words that would uplift their spirit. And don't forget to praise students for their effort rather than to praise for ability. Because usually our tendency is, ang galing mo naman, nakapagbasa ka na, galing mo kasi alam mo yung highfalutin words sa to. Paano kung halimbawang may time na hindi na niya alam? Diba? Would we not anymore praise them? The answer is, let's praise them for their effort, that their willingness, that their yes means a lot. Not only for you as a teacher, but for them. Give your students opportunities to engage in meaningful reading and writing activities, okay, including reading their own and peers' work. Pero again, let's be careful about this because we also have to be sensitive if this could be or this would be okay for our learners or this would be good for our learners. Kung hindi po okay sa kanila, then let's respect. Let's be sensitive also to their emotional needs. Okay, for me, reading is not just a mental need; it's also an emotional need. Diba? Reading is not just a mental work; it is an emotional work. It's an energy work. Okay, so there. And then also offer students access to a wide range of reliable and meaningful reading materials. You can provide them online resources that could be applicable to this journey of theirs. So yeah. Last but not, well, for sure this is not the last yet, but number 10, let's see our parents, okay, the parents of our children and school administrators, people who can contribute, people who can support. And so let's use again the iceberg model. So again, ang event natin may struggling readers. Yan po yung current reality. Ano yung patterns? Yun po ulit, readers experience difficulty. Diba? Pero ano ba yung structure na makakatulong? The answer is, ito yung binabanggit ko po kanina, collaboration. Diba? If we choose to allow our parents to collaborate with us, like we can ask them, we could be able to know our students better if we choose to collaborate with the parents. Because for sure they know, well, my assumption is that they know their children better. And since they know their children better, they could give also like ways on how we teachers can support our the learners as well. And also, let's collaborate. Let's not forget to ask support from our school administrators. Let's not have the mental model na, itong mga school administrators na to, hindi sila supportive. Let's try to shift or to change the mental model from being not supported to you are supported. You are supported by these parents. You are supported by the school administrators. And in return, in reciprocation, you can also give your support. Diba? Support is also a two-way process. See how beautiful it is. Things share two-way processes. Diba? It's a give and take process. Diba? But it's all about allowing it to happen. It's all about making a choice for these things to happen. Last but not the least, okay, having all these things, let's not forget to celebrate success. Let's not forget to appreciate our own effort as teachers. Let's not forget that even the little successes or sometimes delayed successes are still considered successes. Let's not underestimate ourselves na hindi natin kaya eh. Baka naman kaya na yung mindset na hindi kaya. Kaya pala. Kaya ko. Kaya ko kasi gusto ko. Kaya ko kasi mahal ko yung learners ko. Kaya ko kasi I want them to become better versions of themselves through being better readers. If they are able to understand the world better, things will also be better. Things will fall into place. Diba? So, celebrate your own success as a teacher, as a mentor. Diba? You can always tap your shoulder and say, you've done something great. You've done something great for your students and for your learners. Again, this is not easy. This is challenging. But, you just allow yourself to celebrate your own success. That you contributed something. That you sparked something. You ignited something great for your learners and for yourself as well. And so with that, let me share with you my conclusion and recommendation. And this is my conclusion. I'm not telling you it's going to be easy, but I'm telling you right now, it will be worth it. Lahat ng pagod, lahat ng puyat, lahat ng effort natin, lahat ng time na ibibigay natin sa mga learners natin, it will all be worth it. It will all be worth it. Okay? So, let's allow ourselves to embrace that. And sama-sama po tayo dito sa journey na ito. Okay? Everything will be okay. I am here to help. I am here to support. And with the joined hands, with hands that are willing to collaborate, we see the big picture, a beautiful picture that our readers, from struggling readers, they could develop their skills. They can be motivated with love. And so that love will never be felt by our learners if we don't choose to love ourselves even. Let's love ourselves. Let's be gentle also to ourselves. Na kahit mahirap na hindi man makuha kaagad ng mga readers natin, or kahit in a certain period of time they are still struggling, let's be gentle to ourselves. And, tell ourselves na things will be alright. Okay? Things will be alright. Kapit lang. Walang iwanan. And so, this is the end of my presentation. And so now, I would, before I give the floor for questions, I just want to, if you want to reach me out, so I have here the details. You can just always go back to the YouTube video. Okay, and I'm also offering a tutorial and enhancement program for English. And so if you have questions or if you wish to know more about this, then you can just message me in Facebook or email. So yun po. Now, I am allowing myself to entertain your questions po. Thank you so much for listening to our webinar about effective interventions for struggling readers po.
Thank you very much, sir. Now we will proceed to the question and answer portion. Our first question is sent to via FB Messenger by Norena Natividad. So
Hello
let
po.
me read to you the question po. May I ask, would this be implemented in the new normal when there is no face-to-face remedial? For a remedial reading coordinator like me, I don't have an idea. Most of our students had selected modular, not online learning. If we will base it on the protocol that there is no face-to-face remedial, it's even harder if it's modular since we are not allowed to go outside and talk to students.
Okay po. So, if we all know that there are limitations nga po with regard to going out. And so, if the learners po, the surface po are assumptions, diba? If the learners po or our readers have like online platforms, we can always do the assessment, and not the assessment, but the intervention strategies through online. And di ba po yung example ko kanina, yung sa word study po. So if it's not possible to meet your students in the present, or what they call this, in the physical context, then you can ask if they have online platforms in which you can continue extended learning po. And so, with regard naman to module, if, yun nga po yung sasabi ko, let's try our best to collaborate also with the other school administrators if they can also give support to giving modules. And if these modules contain intervention strategies or intervention activities, then I think that's better po. So again, it's not the end. If we could not be able to meet them physically, there are other ways po to do, or to what they call this. There are other ways like online platforms that we can utilize so that we can still continue extended reading intervention po. Yun po.
Thank you so much, sir. Our next question is from Vani Piayas. Producing the sounds of letters is the very basic in reading. How do we teach them this when our children are going to use modules in this time of pandemic, especially pupils with unlearned parents or guardians?
Okay po. So dito po papasok yung, okay, so ang context po natin ay module. So kumbaga sa iceberg po, ang event po natin ay yung module or modular learning. Okay, or modular teaching. Okay. Now, paano natin siya mai-instruct kung hindi po tayo nila kung hindi po nila yung mga students natin hindi po nila tayo nakikita? Well, in the module, you can be very patient to, to explain things word per word, step by step as to how they can be aware in terms of phonemes. Like for example, the sound of bu to, then you can illustrate that through the modules po. So if you are just committed enough to illustrate things in module, then I think that could make things work po. So everything is possible.
Thank you for that, sir. And our last question is from Heidi Karandang. Aside for the Feel IRRI that we are using to assess learners' reading level, do you have other tools that we can use to assess reading level of our pupils?
Okay. Actually, for me, I don't want to. There are a lot of tools available, a lot of reading tools available to ensure that certain learners meet the measure of success. But this, I don't want to focus so much on the tools, but I want to focus on the intervention that we can